As with all Christmas light projects, proper bulb spacing can be as big of a determining factor as to the success of your Christmas light theme as the selection of bulb color itself. And some of the main considerations that you want to have are the size of the house, yard, or building that you may be working with, and also how much power you're going to have at your disposal throughout the course of the project. So when we start to talk about how big of a house or building that you may be working on and how that would impact the spacing of the bulbs that you would want to choose. For instance, if you have a real big home, I would encourage you to use spacing anywhere from 12 to 18 inches. And just as a point of reference, I have 12-inch spacing behind me. These are also C9 bulbs with 12-inch spacing. And again, if you're working on a real big commercial project, you may want to use 18-inch spacing. As we have here. I will point out that these are C7 bulbs. If you were working on a big commercial building, I might point you in the direction of C9 bulbs, as the bigger bulbs do better on bigger buildings. If you're working on a smaller home, you may want to shrink your spacing in a little bit and go from anywhere from 6-inch to 12-inch spacing. This is a C7 cool white with 6-inch spacings. Again, just something to have as a point of reference. More or less the same theory applies if you're working on a yard or a walkway. If you have a real long walkway that you're working on, I would encourage you to have a larger amount of bulb spacing. If you have a shorter walkway or a shorter space that you're illuminating, then you may want to use smaller bulb spacing. Having said all that, a lot of this really boils down to what your personal preference is. And so if you have a desire to have maybe the brightest house in the neighborhood, or to have a house that can be seen from space, then I would encourage you to go with the smallest bulb spacing possible. You're going to have a much more brighter project. If you want to go a little bit of a different route, if you want to go with kind of a softer look or a gentle glow perhaps, then I would encourage you to go with a larger bulb spacing. Like any project that you start, you're going to have a more favorable end result if you do give some real consideration and thought process to this, and you're going to want to think about how bulb spacing is going to impact your project. I would also want you to be cognizant as to how much power you're going to need. This isn't nearly the issue if you're using LEDs, if it is that you're using incandescents. Incandescents require a lot more energy to illuminate, and as such you're going to put a lot more stress on the sockets that you're using. So something that you're going to want to consider. Final point here is that the bulb spacing can very much impact the length of string that you're working with. If you're working with a fixed count of bulbs and you have a large bulb spacing, then you're going to have a larger string. Again, if you're working with a fixed count of bulbs with a smaller spacing, then your string will be a little smaller. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. Very much appreciate your time. If you have any further questions, I would point you to the resource pages at christmaslightsetc.com. There we have a lot of information about splicing of wires and the calculations that I mentioned as far as concerns about how much stress you could put on your socket. Thank you very much for your time. Best of luck to you, and I very much hope you have the best house in the neighborhood. Thank you.